The stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of the weathered general store, and Beatrice Ellis stepped down into the dust of Wyatt, Missouri, with nothing but a carpet bag and the clothes on her back. She was 21 years old, and in all those years, she had never slept in the same bed for more than a handful of months. Orphan trains, foster homes that were little more than labor camps, a brief marriage to a drunk who died in a card game brawl before their first anniversary, and then a string of boarding houses where she worked for her keep. Home was a word other people used, a concept as foreign to her as Latin or French. The August heat pressed down on her shoulders as she surveyed the main street of this Missouri town. It was 1883, and Wyatt was a small but bustling place where the railroad had brought new commerce and new faces. She had come here because a letter had arrived at her last boarding house in St. Louis, offering her a position as a seamstress in a shop that needed skilled hands. The proprietress had seen her work at a dress exhibition and remembered her name. It was not much, but it was something, and Beatrice had learned long ago to take what came and make the best of it. She walked toward the dress shop, her boots leaving prints in the dirt that the wind would erase within minutes. Everything about her felt temporary, like those footprints. The shop was called Morrison's Fine Dressmaking, and when she entered, a bell chimed overhead. A woman in her 50s looked up from a cutting table, spectacles perched on her nose. "You must be Miss Ellis," the woman said, her voice warm. "I am Mrs. Morrison. Welcome to Wyatt." "I hope the journey was not too taxing." "It was fine, thank you," Beatrice said, setting down her bag. "I am grateful for the opportunity." Mrs. Morrison smiled and gestured around the shop. Bolts of fabric lined the walls, and dress forms stood like silent sentinels displaying the latest fashions. "I will show you to your room. It is upstairs, small but clean. You will take your meals with me and my husband. We live next door." The room was indeed small, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the alley. But it was hers, at least for now, and Beatrice unpacked her few belongings with careful precision. A change of clothes, a hairbrush, a small Bible her first foster mother had given her, and a tin box that held $3.60. Her entire life fit into a carpet bag. She started work the next morning, her fingers moving with practiced ease through the delicate fabrics. Mrs. Morrison was kind but exacting, and Beatrice appreciated that. She did not want pity or coddling. She wanted to earn her place, to prove her worth through her skill. The days fell into a rhythm. Rise before dawn, dress, work until the light faded, eat a simple supper, sleep. It was a life, if not quite a home. 3 weeks after her arrival, Beatrice was sent to deliver a finished dress to a ranch outside of town. Mrs. Morrison's husband was too busy with other deliveries, and Beatrice welcomed the chance to see more of the countryside. She borrowed a horse from the livery, a gentle mare named Daisy, and rode out along the road that wound through the hills. The Thornton ranch was modest compared to some of the sprawling cattle operations farther west, but it had good pasture land and a sturdy house that had weathered many seasons. Beatrice tied Daisy to the hitching post and carried the wrapped dress to the front door. A woman in her 40s answered, her face friendly and open. "You must be from Mrs. Morrison's shop," she said. Come in. Let me get my coin purse." While the woman disappeared into another room, Beatrice waited in the parlor, noting the family photographs on the mantel, the worn but comfortable furniture, the sense of permanence that seemed to emanate from the very walls. This was a home, she thought. This was what other people had. "My son will be in shortly," the woman called from the other room. "He is just finishing up with the horses." Beatrice nodded, though the woman could not see her. She heard boots on the porch, and then the door opened. The man who entered was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of weathered denim. He wore a dusty work shirt and trousers, and his hands were rough from labor. He stopped when he saw her, removing his hat. "Madam," he said, his voice quiet but not unfriendly. "Good afternoon," Beatrice replied. His mother returned with payment for the dress, and the transaction was completed. But as Beatrice turned to leave, the woman said, "Patrick, why don't you ride back with Miss Ellis? It will be dark soon, and the road can be tricky if you do not know it well." Patrick Thornton looked at his mother, then at Beatrice. "If the lady does not mind the company." "I do not mind," Beatrice said, though she was not sure if that was true. She was accustomed to being alone, to keeping her own counsel. Company made her uneasy, as though she might reveal too much of herself without meaning to. They rode in silence for the first mile, the horses plodding along at an easy pace. Patrick seemed content not to talk, and Beatrice found that oddly comforting. So many people felt the need to fill every silence with chatter, but he seemed to understand that words were not always necessary. Finally, he said, "You are new to Wyatt." "I am. I arrived a few weeks ago. Do you like it here?" Beatrice considered the question. Did she like it? She was not sure she had ever liked any place she had lived. Like implied a choice, a sense of belonging, and she had never had either. "It seems like a good town," she said carefully. "It is," Patrick said. "Folks are decent for the most part, mind their own business." They rode a bit farther, and then Patrick said, "I hope my mother did not put you out asking me to accompany you. She worries." "It is no trouble. She has been after me to be more social," Patrick said, and there was a hint of wryness in his tone. "She thinks I spend too much time with the horses and cattle and not enough with people." "Do you?" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe. But animals do not expect much from you. They do not judge or gossip or ask questions you cannot answer." Beatrice felt something shift in her chest, a recognition that surprised her. "No, they do not." They reached the edge of town as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Patrick tipped his hat to her as she returned the horse to the livery. "Safe travels, Miss Ellis." "Thank you for the escort, Mr. Thornton." She watched him ride away, his figure silhouetted against the fading light, and she felt an unfamiliar ache. It was not attraction, not exactly, though he was certainly handsome in a rough, unpolished way. It was something else, a sense that he understood loneliness in the same way she did. The summer turned to autumn, and Beatrice settled more deeply into her routine. She was good at her work, and Mrs. Morrison came to rely on her increasingly. The women of Wyatt appreciated her skill with a needle and her quiet, unobtrusive manner. She did not gossip or pry, and that made her trustworthy in a way that few others were. She saw Patrick Thornton occasionally when she made deliveries to the ranch or when he came into town for supplies. They exchanged polite greetings, but nothing more. Beatrice told herself that was for the best. She did not need complications, and a cowboy with kind eyes and a quiet manner was exactly the sort of complication she should avoid. But late at night, lying in her narrow bed, she sometimes thought about him. About the way he sat a horse, easy and confident. About the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to his mother. About the fact that he seemed as solitary as she was, and yet not lonely in the desperate way she sometimes felt. In October, a storm blew through Wyatt with a fury that rattled windows and tore shingles from roofs. Beatrice was working late, finishing a wedding dress that was needed in 2 days, when the wind picked up and the rain began to fall in sheets. Mrs. Morrison had already gone home, trusting Beatrice to lock up, and now Beatrice stood at the window watching the storm with a mixture of awe and unease. The door opened suddenly, and she spun around, her hand going to her throat. Patrick Thornton stood in the doorway, soaked to the skin, his hat dripping water onto the floor. "Forgive me," he said. "I did not mean to startle you. I was riding through and saw the light. I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Beatrice said, though her heart was racing. "Just finishing some work." Patrick looked around the shop, then back at her. "You should not be here alone. The storm is getting worse." "I only have a bit more to do." "Then I will wait," he said, and there was a firmness in his voice that surprised her. "I will not leave you here by yourself." She wanted to argue, to tell him she did not need his protection, but the truth was that the storm was frightening and she was grateful for his presence. She returned to her work, her fingers moving quickly through the delicate stitches, aware of him watching her. "You are very skilled," Patrick said after a while. "Thank you." "How did you learn?" Beatrice hesitated. She did not like talking about her past, about the orphan train and the foster homes and the endless string of temporary places. But something about the storm and the lateness of the hour and the way Patrick waited so patiently made her want to answer. "I was taught by a woman who took me in when I was 12, she said. "She was a seamstress and she needed help. I had some natural ability and she refined it." "Where was that?" "Indiana. I was there for 2 years and then she died and I had to move on." Patrick was silent for a moment. "I am sorry. It was a long time ago, still." She finished the last stitch and set down her needle. "I am done. We can go now." They stepped out into the storm and Patrick insisted on walking her to the boarding house where she lived above the dress shop. The rain pelted them, and the wind tried to tear her shawl from her shoulders. Patrick took her arm, steadying her, and they hurried through the muddy streets. At the door, she turned to him. "Thank you for seeing me home." "It was nothing," he said, but his eyes said otherwise. They said that she mattered, that her safety was important, and Beatrice felt that ache in her chest again. "You should get out of those wet clothes," she said. "You will catch your death." Patrick smiled, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his face. "I will. Good night, Miss Ellis." "Good night." She watched him disappear into the storm, and then she climbed the stairs to her room. She changed out of her wet clothes and wrapped herself in a quilt, but she could not stop shivering. It was not the cold. It was the realization that she wanted to see Patrick Thornton again, that she looked forward to their brief encounters, that she thought about him more than was wise. The next time she saw him was at the church social in November. Beatrice did not usually attend such events, preferring to keep to herself, but Mrs. Morrison had insisted. "You work too hard," she said. "You need to enjoy yourself sometimes." The church hall was decorated with autumn leaves and gourds, and tables were laden with food. Beatrice stood near the punch bowl, feeling out of place among the families and couples. She was about to leave when Patrick appeared at her side. "Miss Ellis," he said, "I did not expect to see you here." Mrs. Morrison insisted. "I am glad she did." They stood together in companionable silence, watching the children chase each other around the room and the older folks gossip over plates of pie. After a while, Patrick said, "Would you like to take a walk? It is warm in here." Beatrice nodded, and they stepped outside into the cool November air. The sky was clear and stars glittered overhead like scattered diamonds. They walked along the quiet street, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. "I have been thinking about what you said," Patrick said, "about moving around so much. That must have been difficult." "It was all I knew," Beatrice said. "I did not realize until I was older that other people had different lives, that they stayed in one place and had families and roots." "Do you want that? Roots?" Beatrice stopped walking and looked up at him. His face was shadowed, but she could see the earnestness in his eyes. "I do not know if I am capable of it," she said honestly. "I have never had it, so I do not know how to create it." Patrick was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I am not much, Miss Ellis." I have a small share in my family's ranch, a horse and a dog. I am not educated or refined. I work with my hands and I do not have much to offer. But if you would have me, I would give you a home. I would give you a place to stay, a place to belong. I would give you everything I have, little as it is. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes and she blinked them back fiercely. No one had ever offered her anything like this. No one had ever looked at her and seen someone worth keeping, worth building a life with. Her brief marriage had been a desperate gamble, a girl of 18 clinging to a man who promised security but delivered only chaos. This was different. Patrick was different. Why? She whispered. You barely know me. I know enough, Patrick said. I know you are kind and hardworking. I know you are strong because you have survived things that would break most people. I know that when I see you, I feel less alone. And I know that I want to give you what you have never had. A home. A place that is yours. Someone who will not leave. The tears spilled over then and Beatrice could not stop them. Patrick reached out and gently wiped them away with his thumb, his touch careful and reverent. I am afraid, she said. I am afraid I will not know how to do this. I am afraid I will fail. We will figure it out together, Patrick said. I am not asking you to have all the answers. I am just asking you to try. Beatrice looked at him, this quiet cowboy with his rough hands and his gentle heart, and she felt something inside her shift and settle. She had been running for so long, always waiting for the next move, the next loss. But maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to let someone catch her. Yes, she said. Yes, I will try. Patrick smiled, and it was like the sun coming out after a long winter. He took her hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers, and they stood there under the stars, two solitary people who had found each other in the vastness of the world. They were married in December, a simple ceremony in the church with Mrs. Morrison and Patrick's parents as witnesses. Beatrice wore a dress she had made herself, pale blue silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. Patrick wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving her face. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Patrick kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. She had been kissed before by her first husband, but those kisses had been rough and demanding, taking without giving. Patrick's kiss was different. It was a promise, a vow, a declaration that she was precious and cherished. They moved into a small house on the Thornton property, a two-room cabin that Patrick had built himself with help from his father. It was not much, but it was clean and sturdy, and Patrick had filled it with things he thought she might need. A cast-iron stove, a table and chairs, a bed with a quilt his mother had made, shelves for her sewing supplies. I know it is not grand, Patrick said as he carried her over the threshold, but it is yours, our home. Beatrice looked around the cabin, at the rough wooden walls and the simple furnishings, and she felt something warm and unfamiliar bloom in her chest. It is perfect, she said, and she meant it. That first night, Patrick was gentle with her, his hands careful as he undressed her, his voice soft as he whispered her name. He made love to her with a patience and care that made her weep again, and afterward he held her close and stroked her hair and told her she was beautiful. I have never felt this way before, Beatrice said, her face pressed against his chest. Safe, wanted. You are safe, Patrick said. You are wanted. You are mine and I am yours, and nothing will change that. The winter was harsh that year, with snow piling high and temperatures dropping below zero. But inside their cabin, Beatrice and Patrick built a life together. She sewed and mended, taking on work from Mrs. Morrison that she could do at home. Patrick worked the ranch, caring for the cattle and horses, chopping wood and hauling water. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking or simply enjoying each other's presence. Beatrice learned what it meant to have a partner, someone who shared the burdens and the joys. When she was overwhelmed by the sheer unfamiliarity of having a home, Patrick held her and reminded her that she belonged. When he came in exhausted from a long day in the cold, she had hot food and a warm fire waiting. They were building something together, brick by brick, day by day. In February, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. A baby. A child who would grow up in this home, who would never know what it was like to be rootless and adrift. She told Patrick one evening after supper, her voice trembling. Patrick's face went through a series of emotions: shock, joy, fear, wonder. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he said. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Beatrice asked. "I am terrified," Patrick said honestly. "But yes, I am happy. I am so happy I can barely stand it." The months passed, and Beatrice's belly grew round. Patrick was endlessly solicitous, insisting she rest, fetching whatever she needed, worrying over every twinge and ache. His mother was equally attentive, bringing food and offering advice and assuring Beatrice that childbirth was natural and she would be fine. But as the due date approached, Beatrice's fear grew. She had never had a mother to guide her, never had anyone to tell her what to expect. She tried to hide her anxiety, but Patrick saw through her. "Talk to me," he said one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "Tell me what you are afraid of." "Everything," Beatrice whispered. "I am afraid something will go wrong. I am afraid I will not know how to be a mother. I am afraid I will fail this child the way I feel like everyone failed me." Patrick was quiet for a moment, his hand moving in slow circles on her stomach. "You will not fail," he said finally. "You are the strongest person I know. You have survived things that would destroy most people, and you are still kind and gentle and good. This child is lucky to have you as a mother." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know you," Patrick said. "I see you, and I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." Beatrice turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, so much. I did not think I was capable of loving anyone, but you showed me I was wrong." They held each other in the darkness, and Beatrice felt the baby kick between them, a reminder of the life they had created together. The baby came in late September, a boy with Patrick's dark hair and Beatrice's blue eyes. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Beatrice thought she could not go on, but Patrick stayed by her side, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, pink and squalling, Beatrice wept with relief and joy. "He is perfect," Patrick said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are perfect." They named him Peter after Patrick's grandfather, and Beatrice marveled at the way her life had changed in less than a year. She had gone from a rootless, solitary woman to a wife and mother, and while the adjustment was not always easy, she would not trade it for anything. Peter was a good baby, content to sleep in the cradle Patrick had made and nurse at Beatrice's breast. She sang to him, lullabies she half remembered from her own childhood, and she told him stories about the world and all the wonders it held. Patrick was a devoted father, holding Peter with a gentleness that belied his rough hands, talking to him as though he could understand every word. As Peter grew, so did their family. A daughter came 2 years later, a tiny thing with blonde curls and a sweet disposition. They named her Bridget, and she was doted on by her older brother and parents alike. Patrick expanded the cabin, adding 2 more rooms so the children could have their own space, and Beatrice planted a garden where she grew vegetables and flowers. The years passed, and Beatrice watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and wonder. Peter was serious and thoughtful, much like his father, while Bridget was spirited and curious. They fought and played and learned, and Beatrice taught them everything she knew about kindness and resilience and the importance of family. One evening, when Peter was 7 and Bridget was 5, Beatrice stood in the doorway of the cabin and looked out at the land that had become her home. The sun was setting, casting everything in golden light, and she could see Patrick in the distance, riding in from the far pasture. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the breeze. This was her life now. This was her home. And it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. Patrick rode up and dismounted, his eyes finding hers immediately. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Just how much everything has changed," Beatrice said. "How different my life is now." Patrick put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Better, so much better," Beatrice said. "I never thought I could have this. A home, a family. Someone who loves me." "You deserve it," Patrick said. "You deserve all of this and more." They stood together, watching their children play, and Beatrice felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had spent so many years believing she was not worthy of love or belonging, but Patrick had shown her otherwise. He had given her a home, not just a physical place, but a sense of safety and acceptance that she had never known. But life, Beatrice had learned, was never without its challenges. The following spring, a drought settled over Missouri, and the crops withered in the fields. The cattle grew thin, and the wells ran low. Patrick and his father worked tirelessly to keep the ranch going, but it was a losing battle. By summer, they were facing the very real possibility of losing everything. Beatrice watched Patrick grow more haggard with each passing day, the worry etched deep in his face. He tried to hide it from her, but she knew him too well. One night, as they lay in bed, she said, "Talk to me. Tell me what we are facing." Patrick sighed, a sound full of exhaustion and despair. "We are in trouble, Bea, real trouble. If the drought does not break soon, we will lose the ranch. My father has already taken out loans and we cannot make the payments. I do not know what we are going to do." Beatrice was silent for a moment, her mind racing. Then she said, "I have been taking on more sewing work. I can take on even more, and I have some money saved. It is not much, but it is something." "I cannot take your money," Patrick said. "That is yours." "It is ours," Beatrice corrected. "We are a family. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. We will figure this out together." Patrick turned to her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promised you a home. I promised you security. And now I am failing you." "You are not failing me," Beatrice said fiercely. "You have given me everything. A home is not just a place. It is the people in it. It is you and Peter and Bridget. As long as we are together, we have a home." Patrick pulled her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. "I love you so much," he said. "I do not know what I did to deserve you." "You saw me," Beatrice said simply. "You saw me when no one else did." They held each other in the darkness, drawing strength from one another, and in the days that followed, they worked together to save the ranch. Beatrice took on every sewing job she could find, her fingers flying through the fabric late into the night. Patrick and his father sold off some of the cattle and cut expenses wherever they could. It was a difficult, uncertain time, but they faced it together. And then, in late August, the rains came. They started as a drizzle, gentle and tentative, and then grew into a steady downpour that lasted for 3 days. The parched earth drank it in, and the grass began to green. The wells filled, and the crops that had survived the drought began to recover. Patrick stood in the rain, his face turned up to the sky, and he laughed. It was a sound of pure relief and joy, and Beatrice ran out to join him. They danced in the rain, spinning and laughing like children, and the worry that had hung over them for months lifted like a fog. The ranch was saved, and so was their home. It was not easy, and there were still debts to pay and work to be done, but they had weathered the storm together. And that, Beatrice knew, was what mattered. As the years went on, Beatrice continued to marvel at the life she had built. Peter grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with a quiet confidence that made her proud. Bridget was a whirlwind of energy and ambition, determined to see the world beyond Wyatt. Beatrice supported both of them, encouraging their dreams while holding them close. Patrick's parents passed away within a year of each other, and the ranch became Patrick and Beatrice's fully. It was a bittersweet transition, tinged with grief, but also with gratitude for the legacy they had been given. Patrick worked the land with the same dedication his father had, and Beatrice continued to sow and tend the garden and raise their children. One day, when Peter was 18 and Bridget was 16, Beatrice sat on the porch with Patrick, watching the sunset. "Do you remember the night you asked me to marry you?" she said. Patrick smiled. "Of course, you cried." "I cried because no one had ever offered me a home before," Beatrice said. "No one had ever seen me as someone worth keeping." "I saw you," Patrick said. "I saw you from the moment we met. You were so self-contained, so determined not to need anyone. But I wanted you to know that you could need me, that I would be there." Beatrice reached over and took his hand, their fingers intertwining. "You kept your promise. You gave me a home. You gave me everything." "And you gave me a reason to build that home," Patrick said. "Before you, I was just going through the motions, working the ranch, doing what was expected. But you made me want more. You made me want to create something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of shared experiences and deep understanding. Beatrice thought about the girl she had been, so lost and alone, and the woman she had become. She had a home now, not just in the physical sense but in the deepest, most profound way. She had a place where she belonged, people who loved her, and a life that was rich with meaning. Peter eventually took over more of the ranch work, allowing Patrick to slow down a bit. Bridget went to St. Louis to study at a teacher's college, a decision that filled Beatrice with both pride and a touch of sadness. She understood the need to leave, to see what else the world had to offer, but she also knew the ache of separation. When Bridget came home for visits, the house felt complete again. She told stories of the city, of the classes she was taking and the friends she had made, and Beatrice listened with rapt attention. She wanted her daughter to have every opportunity she had never had, to build a life on her own terms. Peter brought home a young woman named Sarah, a quiet girl from a neighboring ranch, and asked for her hand in marriage. The wedding was held at the ranch, under the same trees where Beatrice and Patrick had spoken their vows years before. Beatrice watched her son promise to love and cherish Sarah, and she saw the same earnestness in his eyes that she had seen in Patrick's all those years ago. "He will be a good husband," Patrick said, standing beside her. "We raised him well." "We did," Beatrice agreed, tears streaming down her face. "We really did." A year later, Beatrice became a grandmother when Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. Holding that tiny bundle in her arms, Beatrice felt the circle of life close in the most beautiful way. She had gone from being a rootless orphan to a wife, a mother, and now a grandmother. She had created a family, a legacy, and it was more than she had ever imagined possible. Patrick was equally smitten with his granddaughter, spending hours rocking her and telling her stories about the ranch. Beatrice watched him with a full heart, grateful for this man who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. As the years turned into decades, Beatrice and Patrick grew old together. Their hair turned gray and their bodies slowed, but their love remained as strong as ever. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, and they talked about everything and nothing. "Do you have any regrets?" Beatrice asked one evening. Patrick was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. No, I have lived a good life. I have had you, and that is more than enough. I have no regrets either, Beatrice said. You gave me a home, Patrick. You gave me a place to belong, and that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. They sat in silence, the sound of crickets filling the air, and Beatrice felt a profound sense of peace. She had spent so many years searching for something she could not name, and Patrick had given it to her. Home, family, love, belonging. When Patrick passed away at the age of 78, Beatrice was devastated. They had been married for 56 years, and he had been her anchor, her constant, her home. The grief was overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to pull her under. But her children and grandchildren rallied around her, holding her up when she could not stand on her own. Peter and Sarah moved into the main house with her, and Bridget, now a teacher in a nearby town, visited frequently. They filled the house with love and laughter, and while Beatrice missed Patrick with every fiber of her being, she was grateful for the family they had built together. She spent her final years surrounded by those she loved, telling stories about Patrick and the life they had shared. She taught her grandchildren to sew, passing on the skills that had sustained her for so long. She tended her garden, the flowers blooming in vibrant colors, and she sat on the porch watching the land that had become her home. When Beatrice passed away at the age of 81, she was laid to rest beside Patrick under the cottonwood tree at the edge of the property. Her children and grandchildren stood around the grave, tears streaming down their faces, but also with smiles as they remembered the woman who had taught them about resilience and love and the importance of family. Peter, now a man in his 50s, spoke at the funeral. "My mother spent the first part of her life without a home," he said. "She moved from place to place, never staying long enough to put down roots. But then she met my father, and he gave her what she had always longed for: a home, a family, a place to belong, and in turn she gave that to us. She taught us that home is not just a place. It is the people who love you, the memories you create together, and the legacy you leave behind. My mother left behind a legacy of love, and for that we are eternally grateful." As the mourners dispersed, Peter stood by the grave with his sister. "She was happy, was she not?" Bridget asked. "She was," Peter said. "Father gave her a home, and she never took it for granted, not for a single day." "I am glad," Bridget said. "She deserved it." They stood in silence, remembering the woman who had been their mother, their teacher, their guide. And as the sun set over the Missouri hills, casting everything in golden light, they knew that Beatrice Ellis Thornton had found what she had been searching for all her life. She had found home. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations, a testament to the love and determination of Beatrice and Patrick. Their great-grandchildren played in the same yard where Peter and Bridget had played, and the house that Patrick had built was expanded and renovated but never abandoned. On the mantel in the parlor, there was a photograph of Beatrice and Patrick, taken on their 50th wedding anniversary. They were standing on the porch of the cabin, their arms around each other, their faces lined with age but glowing with happiness. Beneath the photograph was a small plaque that Peter had commissioned. It read, "She had never had a real home, and the cowboy said he was not much, but he was hers if she would take him. And she did. And they built a life together that was more than either of them had ever dreamed." It was a simple epitaph, but it captured the essence of their love story. Two people who had been alone and adrift, finding each other and creating something beautiful and lasting. A home, a family, a legacy. And in the quiet moments, when the wind rustled through the cottonwood trees and the sun warmed the earth, those who walked the land could almost hear the echoes of their laughter, feel the strength of their love, and know that some bonds transcend time and death. Beatrice and Patrick had found each other in the vastness of the world, and they had built a home that would endure long after they were gone. Their story became a part of the family lore, told and retold to each new generation. The children learned about the grandmother who had grown up without a home and the grandfather who had promised to give her one. They learned about love and commitment and the importance of seeing people for who they truly are, not just what they appear to be on the surface. Sarah, Peter's wife, often told her grandchildren about the day she first met Beatrice. "Your great-grandmother had the kindest eyes," she would say. But there was also a sadness in them, a shadow of all the loss she had endured, and yet she was never bitter. She was grateful for every moment, every blessing. She taught me that it is not what happens to you that defines you, but how you respond to it. The grandchildren listened with rapt attention, absorbing the lessons and the love that had been passed down through the generations. They understood that they were part of something larger than themselves, a family that had been built on a foundation of love and resilience. Bridget, who had become a respected educator and advocate for orphans and displaced children, often spoke about her mother's influence on her career. "My mother knew what it was like to be unwanted, to feel as though you did not belong anywhere," she would say. "And she made sure that I understood how important it is to see people, to acknowledge their worth, to give them a chance. That is what my father did for her, and that is what she did for me and my brother. And that is what I try to do in my work." Her efforts led to the establishment of a small home for orphan children in Wyatt, a place where they could find stability and love while waiting for permanent families. The home was named Beatrice House, in honor of the woman who had known the pain of displacement and had dedicated her life to creating a sense of home for others. The years continued to pass, and the world changed in ways that Beatrice and Patrick could never have imagined. The Wild West gave way to modernity, with automobiles replacing horses and electricity lighting up the night. But the Thornton Ranch remained, a constant in a changing world, a reminder of the enduring power of love and family. Peter's children took over the ranch when he grew too old to manage it himself, and they continued the traditions that had been established by their grandparents. They worked the land with the same dedication, raised their children with the same values, and honored the legacy that had been passed down to them. On the anniversary of Beatrice and Patrick's wedding, the family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. It had become a tradition, a way to honor the couple who had started it all. They shared stories and memories, ate food that Beatrice had loved, and toasted to the enduring power of love. One of the great-great-grandchildren, a young woman named Emily, stood up to speak. "I never met my great-great-grandparents," she said, "but I feel like I know them. I know them through the stories, through the legacy they left behind. They taught us that home is not a place. It is the people who love you, the memories you create together, and the values you pass down. And I am so grateful to be part of this family, to carry on what they started." There was not a dry eye in the room as Emily sat down. The family gathered around the photographs and mementos that had been preserved over the years, touching the tangible remnants of a love that had transcended time. Later that evening, as the sun set over the Missouri hills, casting everything in that familiar golden light, the family walked out to the cottonwood tree where Beatrice and Patrick were buried. They stood in a circle around the graves, holding hands, and someone began to sing. It was a hymn that Beatrice had loved, one that spoke of grace and redemption and the promise of eternal home. As the voices rose in harmony, blending together in the stillness of the evening, there was a sense of completeness, of a story fully told. Beatrice Ellis had spent the first part of her life searching for a home, and Patrick Thornton had given her one. But more than that, they had created a home together, a place of love and acceptance and belonging that had endured for generations. Their love story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was a quiet, steady love that had grown over time, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. It was a love that had weathered storms and droughts, joy and sorrow, and had emerged stronger for it. And as the last notes of the hymn faded into the night, the family stood together, bound by the legacy of two people who had dared to believe that they were worthy of love, that they could create something beautiful out of the broken pieces of their pasts. The ranch continued on, a living testament to Beatrice and Patrick's love. The house was filled with new generations, new laughter, new memories. But the spirit of the original homesteaders remained, woven into the very fabric of the place. In the parlor, a journal that Beatrice had kept during the early years of her marriage was displayed in a glass case. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the words were as powerful as the day they had been written. One entry, dated January 1884, read, "I have been married to Patrick for just over a month, and I still cannot quite believe that this is my life. I wake up every morning in our cabin, and for a moment I am disoriented. Where am I? And then I remember. I am home. I am in the place that Patrick built for me, the place where I belong. It is the most extraordinary feeling to belong somewhere to someone. I spent so many years believing that I was not worthy of this, that I was destined to wander forever. But Patrick saw something in me that I could not see in myself. He saw a woman worth loving, worth keeping, and I will spend the rest of my life proving him right." Another entry, dated September 1884, shortly after Peter's birth, read, "I held my son in my arms today, and I made him a promise. I promised that he would always have a home, that he would never know the pain of being unwanted, of being rootless. I promised that I would love him fiercely and protect him with everything I have. And I promised that I would teach him what Patrick taught me, that love is the foundation of home, and that everyone deserves a place to belong." These words, written over a century ago, still resonated with the family. They were a reminder of where they had come from, of the struggles and triumphs that had shaped them. They were a call to continue the work that Beatrice and Patrick had started, to create homes not just for themselves but for others. Bridget's orphanage, Beatrice House, flourished over the years. It became a model for other communities, a place where displaced children could find safety and love. The staff were trained to see each child as an individual, to recognize their worth and potential. Many of the children who passed through Beatrice House went on to lead successful, fulfilling lives, and they often spoke of the impact the home had on them. One former resident, a man named Thomas who had come to Beatrice House as a frightened 10-year-old, returned decades later to speak at a fundraising event. "I was lost when I arrived here," he said. "I had been shuffled from place to place, and I had stopped believing that anyone would ever want me. But the people at Beatrice House saw me. They saw my potential, my worth. They gave me a home, not just a bed and meals, but a sense of belonging. And that changed everything. I learned that I was worthy of love, that I had something to offer the world. And I owe that to the legacy of Beatrice Ellis Thornton, a woman who understood what it meant to be unwanted and who dedicated her life to making sure others did not have to feel that way." His words were met with thunderous applause, and many in the audience were moved to tears. The legacy of Beatrice and Patrick was not just in the land they had worked or the family they had raised. It was in the countless lives they had touched, the ripples of love and compassion that had spread far beyond the borders of the Thornton Ranch. As the years continued to unfold, the family never forgot the lessons they had learned. They understood that home was not a given, that it had to be created and nurtured. They worked to ensure that every member of the family felt valued and loved, that no one was left behind or forgotten. And they understood that the greatest gift they had been given was the example of Beatrice and Patrick, two people who had found each other in the vastness of the world and had built something beautiful and lasting. A home, a family, a legacy of love that would endure for generations to come. The sun set over the Missouri hills, casting the Thornton ranch in that familiar golden light, and the land seemed to whisper the story of the cowboy and the woman who had never had a home. It was a story of hope and redemption, of love and belonging, of two souls who had found each other and had dared to believe that they were worthy of happiness. And in the quiet moments when the wind rustled through the cottonwood trees and the stars glittered overhead, those who walked the land could feel it. The love, the legacy, the enduring promise that home is not a place but a feeling, a sense of belonging that transcends time and space. Beatrice Ellis Thornton had finally found her home, and in doing so, she had created a home for countless others. Her story was a testament to the power of love, the importance of seeing and being seen, and the profound truth that everyone, no matter their past, deserves a place to belong. And so the story of Beatrice and Patrick lived on, told and retold, a beacon of hope for all who heard it. A reminder that even in the vast and often lonely world, there is always the possibility of finding home, of finding love, of finding someone who sees you, who values you, who offers you everything they have and asks only that you take it. She had never had a real home, but the cowboy said he was not much, but he was hers if she would take him. And she did. And together, they built a home that would stand the test of time, a legacy that would inspire generations, and a love story that would never be forgotten.